my gosh. Hey! Great podcast. That's amazing.
Welcome to the Crazy Dre Podcast Show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's your main man, a.k.a. Crazy Croc, a.k.a. Andre's Podcast. Folks, it's me. I'm back. I told you I was going to do a podcast about the post-election. I just wanted to say congratulations to Donald Trump. I was a little surprised that it was that much separation. And I guess the mass media has always been able to manipulate or try to manipulate their scenario of what's going on with the politics in today's world. And I tell you, I think the American people have spoken. Not only did the popular vote of Donald Trump come through, but obviously the electoral vote came through as well. So for a president for someone to become president, they have to have 270 electoral votes, as old as the United States of America when it was founded. And sometimes the popular vote doesn't add up to the winner. In this case, it did. And obviously, Kamala Harris lost. But let's start from the beginning. So when Joe Biden was supposed to be the candidate, and he was, he basically said he's out. And obviously, if you watch the debate between Donald Trump and President Joe Biden, you could tell that Joe Biden was not coherent, not there, couldn't focus. He was a lost man, a lost soul, a man that probably is way too old, some form of dementia, or Alzheimer's, or just being old. And a lot of us got to wonder, why would America government allow that to happen? Why would you allow a 81-year-old man try to run for his second election? And it just doesn't make sense. And clearly, they threw him out. The Democratic Party threw him out. It was not, obviously, he did not just say to the American people that he was going to quit. It was through a letter. And then the Democratic Party decided just to give the votes to Kamala Harris. She didn't have to debate anybody. She didn't have to win her Democratic ticket. They kind of just gave it to her. And I tell you, there's a lot of things that went on. She made the election about how awful Donald Trump was and is, or whatever you want to call him. And then they totally made it out to be men against women. Again, this is kind of a theme that I've come up with, that women in this era, in this generation, for the last 20 years, has made everything about men against girls, or men are not as smart as women, or women are so much more civilized than men. And you just don't see that where I come from. Where I come from, it's a smaller community. Obviously, it's near the lake shore of Lake Michigan, but men and women still get along, and they still get married and have kids and everything else with it. But the mass media will tell you from the West Coast to probably all the way to like New York City, New York, that women are the it factor, and guys just are not cool enough for them to date. So basically, Kamala Harris made women's rights more profound. She went to an abortion clinic and said that abortion is a good thing. And I don't know if abortion is ever going to be a good thing. I don't know, even if you're a Christian or Muslim or a Jewish person or you're an atheist, I don't think it's ever a good thing to promote bodily harm to a person who's given birth to another person, depending on how far you think that infant or the embryo becomes a human being. Obviously, two people having sex, the opposite sex, when you have the sperm to go into the woman's like uterus, and it fertilizes the egg of a woman, and its consumption, that's basically another life. It's another life birth, another life form. Thank you, life form. So we never discussed the idea that when a cow becomes pregnant, it's a calf. It's not an embryo. It's not a cell. It's a calf, and that calf is it's grown inside a cow's stomach, and obviously, well, the uterus of the cow. But still, we don't consider that non-animal. It's still an animal inside another animal that's being going through the stages of development in the womb. So in some ways, it doesn't make sense when human beings make an argument that two people having sex of the opposite sex, and the time that you conceive the child or the embryo, it's not a human being, but it is a human being. So I get a lot of Kamala Harris's election stuff. It was about abortion, and it was about how demonizing men or demonizing Donald Trump. But I don't think she really ever had a good chance to win. Because first of all, everyone that's basically 50-60% has knowledge of the history of America, and each party has to go through a process of electing their party winner. And the Republicans did it, and it came down to Donald Trump and whoever had a chance against him. But when it came down to the Democratic Party, when Joe Biden went down, Kamala Harris should have been debating with some other Democrat. And that in itself gave Americans the idea, even if you only know 50% of the politics or the rights or the laws of America, it gave the American people an opportunity to see that that is not correct. And you have to remember, Kamala Harris is not a lifetime politician. She was a district attorney in California. She was brought up in the middle class. We all heard that story. But she's not a lifetime politician, and either was Trump. But at least Trump was a businessman. And I still to this day, I am surprised that people voted for Donald Trump the first time, and I'm not surprised after the second time. Because the first time he proved what he was doing was correct. His policies, his tariff taxes on certain countries that were not playing fair. He didn't go to war with any other country of Ukraine or Russia or there was no involvement with the Middle East of Israel and Israel and Hamas or not Iran, but it's really Iran. But there was no war. There was just peace, and the only thing that really stopped him was COVID-19. Now, no one really knows if this conspiracy theorists think that COVID-19 was something that happened in China, and China started it to get Donald Trump out of office. But to vote for Joe Biden, you thought that was the best thing for America, and in 2020, and America went for it because 19 was blamed of President Trump. And then we had 4 years with Joe Biden, and what did he do? He knew, well, he didn't, I don't know if he did it or the fact that Russia and Iran or Hamas, they knew that Joe Biden wasn't going to do anything to deteriorate or to distract either of those countries from stopping warfare. And to be giving people that much money, Ukraine and to Israel, that much money to keep continually go to war against your enemy. Now, I want to go one war at a time. Now, I feel like with Putin, he would never gone to war with Ukraine. But if they made an agreement, was there a loophole? Was there a something that made Putin nervous about NATO or the territory that they were going to lose? I don't know, but I do know when Donald Trump was in office, he was able to detain Putin's unradical or radical, either radical or unradical decisions. But I don't think that it was so much that. I just think that Putin had so much more respect for Donald Trump. And I think that Donald Trump is a smooth talker. And I think that if you look how he talks to people, if he likes you, he'll make you feel good. If he don't like you, he'll call you stupid and whatever, but he's going to be honest about it. And I think that honestly, of calling someone stupid is what we used to tell people all the time when they did something stupid and they got caught. We wouldn't just say, ha, 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 that's funny. We would just call them stupid. And that's basically what Donald Trump represents in America. But with Putin and Donald Trump, they were buddies. Donald Trump had a way to tell NATO that you can't do something like that. You can't force a policy on Russia, or you couldn't force something that would make Ukraine and Russia go into a fist fight or go into war. And I don't know if he really did anything, but it just seemed like there was some sense of security with Donald Trump in office. And when you look at when you look at Israel and Hamas, or Israel and Iran, you know one thing that's just mind-boggling. So Hamas in October 7 of 2023, Hamas or Iran decided to attack an Israel musical festival. But that's not the most damaging thing. The most damaging thing is that Israel decided to completely demolish anything in the West Banks, but anything in Gaza, or anything that had to do with any Palestinian people. And to eliminate or genocide everybody really doesn't make sense, because what I've read and understood, Palestine is not all Muslim. Palestine is some Christians, some Muslims, and a lot of other intermix of people in there. And in that territory, well, and then you've got to remember the Jewish people. But the Jewish people, if Israel decided to do a new constitution, and this new constitution would include all three cultures or ethnic people. And I don't know if that's correct, but I just said ethnic people. I think it's more cultural. So if Israel decided to write a new constitution that all people are equal, when in reality, if all people were equal, and they had a new House, a new Senate, a new Constitution, a new system, that every person was representative. So it would be the Jewish people, the Muslim people, and the Christian people would all be represented in the new House of Congress in Israel. But what I come to find out, that the Jewish people, the Jews, are the least amount of people in that whole region, the whole Israel. And the majority of the people that hold that land are Muslims and are Christians and what other cultural that's in there. So if they went to a new constitution, a new House of Congress, Israel would be the least, well, Israel would be the minority. And if you are the minority, there will be less seats in the House for you to be represented. And that's what makes America different than nations in the Middle East, or even in Russia, is that we represent all people, and your religion or your spiritual belief cannot play into each individual seat. Now, you can vote for somebody that's might be with Christian values or Muslim values or Jewish values, but we have a way of separating those two systems, those two parts. And it seems to work, and then sometimes it's probably more obvious if you are in the House of Congress in the United States, that you see the Jewish Congress people stick together. You probably see the Christians Congress people stick together, and then you probably see a couple of Muslims and so on and so forth. But that doesn't make the law in America. But in Israel, that would be the law, because if the Jewish people have to share the representation of their new House of Congress, a new nation, new constitution, they would be the least, they would be the minority, and they would lose a lot. They would lose a lot of power. And the way that they keep power is by telling other Western countries that God loves them more than they love the Jews and the Muslims. Their prophet is coming back for them, to help them, to encourage them, to carry on to the next part of the new generations, a new world, a new heaven, a new and burn down the hell. So I don't think that Kamala Harris would have done a really great job if she was in the White House to deal with Putin, Zelensky, Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel, and whoever is part of Hamas. And I tell you people this, I really do. It's a man's world by James Brown. But in that song, men do things for their women to get what they want. Love, unconditional love, sex, emotional support. Anything that a woman wants, James Brown talks about that. It's a man's world in that song. Now you're asking why would I bring up that song? Well, in the man world, most men in this world most countries are run by men. And yes, there are some countries that have women who are chancellors and prime ministers and a couple presidents here and there and so forth. But a lot of times that doesn't really matter because the majority of the leaders in the world are men. And Kamala Harris will be the first Indian lady to be a woman in office. And I don't think countries like Putin, or countries like Russia and Ukraine, which is primarily white, Caucasian, blue-eyed, blonde-haired men and women, and yes, there are brown-haired and brown-eyed white people too. But she would have never stood a chance. And to think that in the Middle East, they don't even respect their women to be equal. In Muslim world, women are still underneath all men. In some parts of the country, in the Middle East, women can't even show their face. Women can't even drive. So I just don't see how she would be able to talk to Hamas leadership and to talk to Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and negotiate a peace treaty. I really don't think that would ever happen. And if you talk about the borders, I mean, her job that Joe Biden gave her was the border. And yes, I know most vice presidents don't do nothing, but they're always in meetings and they always get assigned certain assignments. And Joe Biden gave her the assignment of being the czar of the border. And she didn't go visit that border. She didn't do nothing with it. She was not any form and shape capable of doing anything. And then again, you have to remember the Mexican border are Mexicans, okay? The Mexican people who control that border are probably the cartels. And the cartels have probably a little bit more power than any governor or government leader in Mexico. So all those resorts that you see or you go to in Mexico are run by the cartel. So who's going to control the people leaving Mexico or staying in Mexico are are the Mexican cartel. They're going to send people to America to sell drugs, to bring that money back, and go back and forth. And yes, I get it. There are some Mexican people who are not drug lords or part of the drug community. But if you send people to America and they're not documented, and then you allow those undocumented people to have free housing in the United States, like the state of New York or like New York City, and then you have plenty of Americans down the street from New York City in Philadelphia, in a city called Kinsland, I think, where they have a fentanyl epidemic. So that doesn't make sense that you give free health care, free stuff to undocumented immigrants, and you can't help your own people in the United States. So Kamala Harris would not be a good idea in any part as a president. And I I think that people who are completely upset that Kamala Harris is not the president of the United States, and I think that people who are overexcited about Donald Trump being the president of the United States need to realize that it's not about being a man, or it's not about being a woman or a woman of color, but it's about what's best interest for America, what will make America better, what will make America run smoother. How do we get our debt down? How do we pay off China? How do we get jobs back in America? How do we get jobs back in Michigan? How do we get the car companies in America, automobile, I can't pronounce anything, automobile companies in America, to have Americans make those cars and trucks again? That's what people should be concerned about. Because if Kamala Harris won, how could she make any agreement with the unions in the state of Michigan, which control the workforce in Michigan and surrounding the Midwest? And you have to ask yourself the same thing about Donald Trump. How is he, now that he is in office, how is he going to bring jobs back in America? How is he going to give the American automobile company businesses, two businesses, GM and Ford, to renegotiate a union UAW rights and laws? How can we get the union, the UAW, to negotiate so that we can bring jobs back to Michigan, back to the Midwest, so that the pension plans are not so enormously high, the pay rate is not phenomenally so high, but it creates jobs for people that can live off $40,000 or $50,000 a year, or maybe it's 60, at the most 60. That's what you have to really consider. That's what you should think about. You have to really think about these senators and representatives that won the seat, and now the House Senate, the House of Congress, the majority has gone to the Republicans. But those are the people that you have to be really concerned about as well. As for Americans, yes, Donald Trump won an election. Yes, Kamala Harris lost the election. But who did you vote for in your city council positions? Who did you have to represent your state or your district? Those are the people who are going to write laws. Those are going to pass laws. And to be honest with you, and I'm only going to go 5 more minutes on this because I have to figure out how to keep my audience here with me. But if you voted on one policy on that particular person, that's roughly irresponsible. So if you voted for a Democrat just because their abortion policy, and that policy was to get everyone to be allowed to have an abortion, that's dumb. If I voted for someone that was against abortion and only abortion, that is also just as dumb. And I voted Republican as a president. I voted one house for Republican, and I voted the other Democrat. But I still choose other people that I lost. So I think American people need to get over this identity of a woman being running for president against a white guy with fake hair or whatever. That's not important. What is more important is our policies that we have to comply to other countries. There's just so much work that we have to do. There's just so much. As I take a drink of my Maker's Mark, because the election's over, praise the Lord, as my glasses are coming down my face. You can also find me on on YouTube. So, but you have to consider yourself lucky to be able to vote. It's an honor to vote. This is one of those countries that you can vote and you can disagree and you can agree. And you should not always get upset because you lost. This is not a football game. This is not Michigan against Ohio State. This is not the Detroit Lions against everyone else. Because for Detroit Lions, it is against everyone else because we haven't got to the Super Bowl yet. But this is not a game. This is your rights, your tax rights. I mean, if it's true, President Trump will eliminate federal education, and it's going to go back to the states. And that makes sense. Why should a federal government dish out so much money to all the states when the public school system is falling apart? Where if the states were in charge of their own education, they can actually distribute the money properly and give out raises to the teachers in a proper way. But I don't know that that's even possible. But I'm giving it an option. And I don't know what President Trump's going to do with the income tax. He says he's going to get rid of it. And he said that he's going to give a tax credit to people who are taking care of family members who are disabled. Now, I'm disabled, but I live up by myself. I live alone, and I love it. And I love going out and about, and I love having friends. But you know what? A lot of people don't want to like my presence either, because they think that I should be a straight Republican. They think that I should be, when I say straight Republican, they think the whole, everything I am and everything that I to be is Republican. But I'm an open-minded man who allows people to be who they are. Okay? But, and I think a lot of people think I should be a Republican, a Democrat, because I like Malcolm X or I like Dr. King. But remember, Malcolm X did not like the Democrats. But to most uneducated black folks, you think that Malcolm X would be a Democrat, but he's not. He demonized the Democrats, along with white people. But that's another story that people don't realize, that he changed his ideology about white people. But that's another story. So you have to remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is not about just your rights. This is about all of our rights. This is about American rights. This is why we separated from Great Britain or England, because they allowed the church to dictate anything of the Parliament or the king and queen of England wanted to do. So the king, well, they didn't have Parliament back then. Maybe they did, but they allowed King George and other kings to dictate what they wanted. And if they were a Catholic Christian, they could dictate other people's religious beliefs, tax beliefs. They could tax people for being anything. They could tax you for being a Catholic. They could tax you anything. But we left England because we didn't feel that England should be in charge of everything that we are. The 13 colonies. Taxing stuff that we're not even purchasing. And I know it's different now. Now we are purchasing too much stuff and we're not making enough stuff. So there's three things that President Trump needs to do. First thing he's got to do is bring jobs back to America. And to not just raise the minimum wage or whatever, but he's got to create a tax credit for not just the middle class people, but also for wealthy people who are creating the jobs. And a lot of people don't realize that the reason why he's probably going to give a tax credit to billionaires is because they're the ones who create jobs. Poor people don't create jobs because we don't have enough money or credit to create a job. We might create an idea or our own personal business within our own community of family members, but it's very difficult to create a new business to grow. Most businesses fall apart within the first 6 months or 8 months when you start it. Most businesses don't even make it to 5 years. If you can make it to 5 years and you own your own business, that means you made it. But it doesn't mean that you made a huge profit. That means that you're making enough money to stay afloat. So Trump needs to create jobs in America, bring jobs back to America. Donald Trump, I say Joe Biden. I don't know why I did that. I'm just skimming everywhere. But Donald Trump needs to bring jobs back to America. And a lot of these jobs need to be for men, and especially for men who are not going to be high-tech, high computerized, high machine-wise, but put things together. That's why men are men. They just use their hands. They use their brains to put things together, but they have to use their hands. more like that. They're not going to be a computer type person. And I really don't think that's ever a good idea to eliminate something, because it's always better to do the job faster. No, sometimes certain jobs should take a certain time so that the product is good. Okay? So Donald Trump needs to bring jobs back. 1. 2, secure the border. Make sure that all undocumented people cannot get into this country, or people who are coming back in this country who have criminal record are deported. And 3rd, Americans want their people out of these wars. We don't need to be funding Israel. If Israel wants a holy war amongst the Christians and the Muslims and the Persians, remember, Iran is more Persian than they are Muslim. So that's a whole different conversation as well. So they're not fighting. So majority of Iranian leaderships are not fighting for Islam as their religious worship belief, even though the majority of the people that live in Iran are Muslims. But the political parties of Iran is probably more Persian descendants of ideology. The idea of Persian heritage is much more profound with the higher power. Okay? So we need to get out of these wars. We need to stop funding these wars. We need to stop letting Benjamin Netanyahu become the next unbelievable dictator. And basically, in my opinion, if Benjamin Netanyahu was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy doing this, we would be more afraid of Israel, and the world would be more afraid of Israel, and thinking that another World War III would start. But it hasn't. And then with Ukraine and Russia, I'm going to be honest. You can't close down on a country and corner them that you are with Russia, and then the Russians, the only option that they have, or they say they have, is war with Ukraine, because of the whole NATO thing. Okay? No, I'm not saying that the Russians are right, or they have every right to defend their country or civilization to survive, but you can't eliminate everything of them so that they become absolutely a third country, because that in itself is what's going to drive people crazy into a really bad war. And they've lost a lot of soldiers, but if it gets worse, it could get really bad real quick. And you just don't know what Putin's going to do. You don't know if he's going to throw a bomb in France or some other part of the NATO country. You just don't know. It has already happened. It was documented on CNN, I think sometime in August, that a missile from Russia actually hit something along Poland or another country that's NATO. But the news was really good at hiding that story. But you have to, Zelensky and Ukraine has to understand that Russia and Ukraine are one of the same. Even though they're distant cousins, you're still the same. So you're going to have to realize that as much as you don't like Russia, as much as you think that you love NATO, you have to make better peace with Russia than you do with NATO. And a lot of people that would listen to this right now are probably flipping out and say, that's wrong. But Eisenhower thought that the Russians were much more compromising and agreeing with the next steps between Russia and America. I think Eisenhower had a better relationship with the Russians. And I think that's something that America people or the American government really should relook at that. They should really look at that history with Eisenhower and the lead ambassador of Russia. I really do. I just don't think that the Russians and the Ukrainians are that difficult to come up with an agreement. I just don't think that's not impossible. I think that war itself will end faster than the one in the Middle East. Just my opinion. I don't know where I'm getting this from. I do a lot of listening, of watching programs about the wars and everything else with it, or not just this war, but past wars or battles and all this. So it's not like I'm coming up with this thin air, but it doesn't help that I don't have any documents to show or any proof of where I'm getting my sources from. So, no, I should apologize for that, but working 40 hours a week, doing this podcast, and I tell you this, the reason why I'm doing this podcast is because there are a lot of people like me who are some form of disability or who are disabled, who work full-time, who don't get an opportunity to be heard or to be talked to. And, I would love to be able to work for anybody that has a purpose in life, or listen to somebody that has a purpose in life. So this is kind of why I do this, so I have a way of form and shape to process my thoughts. Because there's not a lot of people with disability that will do this. A lot of people with disability will focus on how to win a sporting event with a lost limb or with a developmental disability. And my days of playing sports or thinking about sports every day is kind of over. And I've always liked politics, and I love talking to people about life and everything else with it. So I'm going to leave you at that. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. This will air soon. You can find me on Spotify. You can find me on Apple Podcasts or anywhere that you get your podcasts. You download it. Thank you, rss.com. That's my. That's where I distribute my podcast to the world. Peace, love, and I hope everyone is okay with this election. So don't let it get to you. You are free. Continue to be free, and do what you do. Do what you love to do. Enjoy your life. Crazy Dre Podcast Show.